Hello and welcome back to the European Parliament in Brussels for the second part of Talking Europe. And my guest today is Martin Schulz, the newly elected president of the European Parliament, an outspoken German MEP from the Alliance of Socialists and Democrats. Mr. Schulz has vowed to give the Parliament a stronger voice in Europe. Mr. Schulz, thank you for having us here at the Parliament in Brussels. Now, you say you want to give the Parliament a stronger voice. Indeed, since the introduction and the adoption of the Lisbon Treaty, this Assembly has been given more powers. And yet the feeling is that under the crisis, you've been slightly marginalized. How do you hope to change that?
The European Parliament has for sure a problem. The public perception of our role is completely different from the reality. The reality is that we are mindful, perhaps the most mindful parliament in Europe, but people have another impression. And this is, during the last 1.5 years, an increasing element that under the pressure of the markets, of the reality, heads of states and governments must act immediately, and that gives to the outside world the image that they are the only one who are acting and deciding. This is wrong, and therefore the President of the Parliament should be amongst them to show they are not alone. We are also, as democratic body, elected body, with them.
Very concretely, EU leaders are meeting on Monday in Brussels to, among other things, discuss the future of the fiscal pact, which was agreed in December. It was originally designed as an intragovernmental treaty. What guarantees do you have that your institution will not be sidelined?
If you read the last draft of the so-called fiscal compact, you will see that after a long trip away from the European so-called communitarian method, where laws are adopted in a relation between the Council of Ministers and the Parliament, and on the way the heads of states and governments of the Eurozone especially created the image, we decide. And the national parliaments, if you read now the draft, the European Parliament is foreseen as the lawmaker in this agreement between the 26, I hope 26.
Because Britain is not on board.
Britain is not on board, not yet, I believe, not yet. Britain will get back to the 27, I'm sure. And so the Parliament is not the loser, the other way around. We are once more in the center of the action, but nobody cares about that. And it's the role and the duty of the President of the European Parliament to make it clear that, and it is necessary to make it clear, because people should not have the impression that an anonymous power in Brussels is interfering directly in their daily life. They must have a place where their voice is listened to and where the decisions to make and influencing their daily life are publicly debated, and where everybody can see who votes in which direction and why. And this place must be the European Parliament.
This week, Christine Lagarde, the director of the IMF, has warned Europe's rescue funds aren't strong enough. She says they aren't strong enough to reassure the markets, to reassure investors. What is your feeling on that?
In my eyes, too early to say that the ESM is not strong enough, because I saw the last actions of the Italian, also the Spanish government, to refinance bonds on the financial markets, and it went well. So there is an undecided situation. It went
But
better.
she says it's going well until the next shock wave.
This is first of all Lagarde's position. My answer is, first of all, let's see. And secondly, the problem is that the member states have not sufficiently revenues, and therefore we are in favor of a financial transaction tax, even if I know that David Cameron has always a psychological crisis when he must listen to our debates. But nevertheless, this is necessary, that those who caused the crisis, banks, assurances, funds, hedge funds, all these people acting on the markets and on the in the speculation field, must contribute to the solution of the crisis, and this is possible via financial transaction tax. 0.05% of any transaction could create an additional tax income to the member states of the Eurozone, around 200 billion euros. I think this is an enormous amount. And if that would be reality. Perhaps we didn't discuss, we had not to discuss with Christine Lagarde about to double the ESM.
Now, all eyes are once again on Greece. This time, time is running out for Athens, really. Greece needs to strike a deal with its creditors in order to secure the second tranche of the bailout fund. Failure to do so, we're told, could lead to the bankruptcy of Greece. How worried are you?
A lot. Bankruptcy of Greece is a bankruptcy of the Greek banking system, affecting immediately the French banking system, affecting directly the German banking system. Then the two biggest member states of the Eurozone of the European Union would be affected directly, Great Britain as well, other countries as well. So the so-called domino effect we must avoid. On the other hand, I think Greece must deepen his commitments to reform itself. And what
Greece hasn't performed enough so far, in your view?
For sure not. And the time was not sufficient time. We are speaking, let's be honest, since a year concretely about transformation of the Greek economy. In the meantime, they have a decrease, every day worse, a decrease of their economy. And what they need are investment in growth and jobs. And therefore, I give an advice to all those who negotiate on Monday, not only to discuss about institutional questions, but to discuss about investments in growth and in jobs. By the way, we have a lot, around 30 million non-used European funds in the budget of the European Union. This is money available directly without increasing.
And what would you do with this money to spend
mobilize this for a relaunch package in Greece? Let's take a concrete example. Greece is a country in which investments in solar energy are for sure very reasonable and meaningful. In the meantime, Germany is abandoning the use of nuclear power. Remains to be, nevertheless, the industrial core of Europe, so with a high need of energy. To combine German energy provide with investments in solar energy in Greece and to create the necessary grids to transfer the electricity from Greece to Germany. It's an enormous investment package in Europe. Why we are so reluctant and from time to time without any fantasy.
Another idea which has been floated in order to foster growth and create jobs is to strengthen mobility across Europe, particularly for young people. Young Greek, Portuguese unemployed could try and find jobs in Germany or Denmark. Do you think this could work?
Very difficult question. And if I answer no, and a young Greek or a young Spanish, a young man or woman in this country is listening to a European, especially a German politician, to say no. In a moment where in Germany we need people to employ workforces, would be very disappointed. But therefore my answer is timely limited, perhaps yes. But what we need is not only growth in Germany and jobs in Germany. We need on a long run and in a short term jobs in Spain, in Italy, in Portugal, in Greece, and therefore the investments must be done there. I repeat, 30 billion non-used money in the social cohesion, in the social fund, in the cohesion policy. Why we are not courageous and say concretely, let's invest in a job creation program for young people younger than 25 years. In Spain, 40% of them jobless. Let's invest the money in concrete job creation there.
Now let's move to another story and leave the euro crisis behind. On Monday, the European Union adopted an oil embargo against Iran to sanction Tehran over its controversial nuclear program. We're going to talk about this in a while, but first, let's have a look at our report.
Not a single drop of Iranian oil in EU territory. That could be the case within 6 months, with new agreement for a European embargo of Iran's oil. Brussels is trying to force Tehran's hand over its controversial nuclear program.
Iran continues to defy UN Security Council resolutions and enriches uranium to 20% at COM, for which there is no plausible civilian explanation.
Such sanctions are likely to hit Iran's economy badly. However, given growing tension between Tehran and Washington in the Strait of Hormuz, the route that carries a third of the globe's maritime oil traffic, diplomacy is still paramount.
The pressure of sanctions is designed to try and make sure that Iran takes seriously our request to come to the table and meet.
The EU takes some 6% of its oil from Iran, several million barrels a day. However, certain nations are more reliant on Iranian oil than others, such as Italy, Spain or Greece, which imports more than a quarter of its oil from the Persian nation. They'll now have a 6-month period to explore other options before the accord signed by the EU's 27 foreign ministers comes into force. Iran's finding itself increasingly isolated on the international stage and has been offering reductions to customers, not to mention easing payments for nations in financial difficulties like Greece. It's a strategy Tehran's likely to push in the months to come. Europe's the country's second largest market, taking 18% of Iran's total oil exports. Under Western pressure, even Japan announced a reduction in its imports from Iran at the beginning of January. But Tehran might still find one way of stemming the flow of hemorrhaging profits.
The Chinese have good heads for business. They're looking at the Iranians and saying, if you strongly reduce your oil prices, we'll be able to boost our purchases again.
For now, Iran has one advantage. Europe's embargo could well force oil prices higher, but Brussels is set to play a waiting game. It'll look at how its sanctions against Tehran are performing in 2 to 3 months' time.
Martin Schulz, an oil embargo against Iran, can it work?
I hope that it will work. And first of all, I'm happy that the Europeans are united. That was not always the case during the last month. Now we are united and we are using our common force to make pressure on Iran. I'm afraid about the reaction of China. I think the Chinese should join the international pressure on them, because we must take into account that there is a president and a regime, perhaps divided on which is concerning the international positions, but the president for the time being, with his extermination rhetoric against Israel. Friday we had the commemoration day of the liberation of Auschwitz. And we are living with a government, with a president of a state who is speaking to eradicate Israel from the map. We should take it serious, and therefore the nuclear program, not only by that reason, but also by other reasons, the nuclear program of Iran is dangerous. And the Iranians, as Cathy Ashton said, should take it very serious and get back as soon as possible to the negotiation table.
Let's move to another story. Hungary, the conservative government of Viktor Orban. We know that the European Union has launched infringement proceedings against Hungary, and this because the EU believes that a package of new laws violates EU treaties and undermines democracy in the country. Now, you recently warned Viktor Orban must know European leaders are not stupid. Do you think that he's been mocking the European institutions?
He's testing. He's a politician, but I met him, and we had a very open-minded and very controversial meeting. I must say it was very interesting to discuss directly to him, and what I discovered is this is a politician who is testing how far he can go on the international scene. He is domestically legitimated to do what he does. He has 52% absolute majority of the votes, and in the frame of his electoral system, 2/3 majority in the country. So what he is doing is legitimated within the country. But if it is politically admissible is another question. Take an example. The biggest radio in the country, in opposition to him,
Club Radio,
had to finish, the license for the radio had to be renewed. They got it not back, and it was given, the license, to Fidesz near enterprise. So these are things we must discuss. This is not forbidden, but it is politically not acceptable.
Now, your assembly is considering invoking an EU treaty article which would suspend Budapest's voting rights. Will you go all the way?
This is on the road. The Civil Liberties Committee is the relevant committee of the Parliament is discussing it. I will not anticipate the results. Nothing can be excluded, but nothing can be anticipated. Therefore, my advice was always and is, let's evaluate very, very carefully until the last detail. Because if you blame somebody on the level of Article 7, this is the strongest weapon of the European Union, and it is not true, then you lose, and he will win. So to use Article 7 has one precondition.
It's called a nuclear weapon.
In South Africa, in some places, rape is seen as a cure for being gay. In the last few years, the country's seen an unprecedented wave of sexual attacks on homosexual women. Now, some victims have decided to start talking about it openly in order to put a stop to it. Planet Hope, today, 2:40 p.m. Paris time, on France 24.